Pearl. Pearl, you get in here now. Mr. Singerly just sent a dozen roses. You know what that means. He'll be arriving at 9 o'clock to take over the whole house for the racing season. Pearl, you hear me, Pearl? What? Who? Oh, Emma. Yes, of course I know who you are. Don't be ridiculous. Well, of course I know Miss Pearl's been dead for 10 years. I'm old, not crazy. Where's my coffee? Oh. I believe this is the day the gentlemen come about the books, isn't it? At what time? 11 o'clock. Well, all right. You may show them up when they arrive. I'll finish dressing now. No, you don't need to help me. I am still capable of dressing myself. And I will wear the purple tea dress. I don't care if it is 20 years old. I like it. Oh, that girl. She's all right. But I miss Pearl. Oh, every day I miss her. 30 years we were together in this house. Never crossed word. Well, hardly ever. Never a blow struck in anger. Well, not more than one or two. I told her that rot gut she kept pouring down her gullet was going to kill her. Well, she had the pick of the cellar. Imported German beer, French brandy, 140 proof Kentucky bourbon, right from the keg. But oh no, nothing would do for Pearl but white lightning. Not out her gullet like I knew it would. Well, I'm just glad I never had a problem with drink. There, now let's see the damages. Well, not too bad for a 77-year-old lady of what some have referred to as questionable habits. And now, with 3 gentlemen callers coming in an hour, I think I deserve a little shot of morphine. No, not at 10 o'clock in the morning. Dr. Nevitt said 1 shot a day, and I promised him. He told me to cut me off altogether if I broke my word again. No shot. No shot. I know. I'll look through my scrapbook. The time will pass before I know it. Presented to Miss Belle Brezing, Lexington, Kentucky, February 14th, 1874, D. Mucci. Did you murder my lover, Dionisio Mucci? I am the famous, or notorious, Belle Brezing, Madam of the South's most opulent parlor house for 30 years. Now, in 1937, it's hard to believe that the lights in this establishment have been dim for 20 years. I was born in the Irishtown section of Lexington, Kentucky, on a street called Rat's Lane. I don't know who my father was. I just know it was not the same father my sister Esther had. Mama's name was Sarah Ann Cox from Woodford County. She was, as the British say, no better than she should be. The name on my birth certificate said Mary Belle Cox. When I was 1 year old, and Hester was 7, Mama married a German immigrant saloon keeper. God only knows why. His name was George Brezing, and he drank and beat up Mama, and Mama cursed him, and brought home other men at night. Mama wasn't a bad woman. It's just that she thought that a few drinks, a little company at the corner saloon would make life nicer, kinder. The only good thing I remember about my first 5 years on this earth was when Mama made me into a real little lady. That's what she called it, a real little lady. Oh, I was a pretty child. I had thick chestnut hair and heavy dark brows that went right straight across and made me look older than I was. Mama emphasized that. She used to copy dresses for me out of Godey's Ladies book. She'd make them out of heavy brocades and satins and silks with ruffles and flounces, and then she'd pad the bodices to give me a bosom. She had my ears pierced, and I wore little pieces of cut glass that sparkled like diamonds, or fake pearls, or big gypsy hoops. Oh, when Mama fitted me out and we went walking, I was always sure the men were staring at us because we were so lovely. Beautiful, Mama Sarah, beautiful, daughter Belle. I found out differently when I started school. When I was 5 years old, I began school at Harrison. I must have been a sight that first day, all gussied up in my grown-up dress, with my hair pinned up and my earrings clinking, but I didn't know it, and I couldn't understand why none of the other children would speak to me. Hello, my name is Belle Brezing. What's your name? Good morning. I'm Belle Brezing. Who are you? I didn't know then that the mothers of all the other children had told them not to have anything to do with me because anybody named Brezing was not fit company for decent people. And the way Mama had dressed me just seemed to confirm the fact. Oh, the teachers were only not too. They sat me in the back of the room where they either ignored me or scolded me for things I didn't know I'd done wrong. If they had to have me in their room, they intended to make an example of me, so at least there would be some benefit for the other children. Oh. By the end of that first day, I knew exactly where I stood. I looked them all in the eye, every single one of them. The prissy girls, the smirking boys, sour-faced teacher, the old harpy of a principal, and I said to myself, I'll do what I want and I'll say what I want and to hell with all of you. Might not have been so bad if Hester had been there, but by that time, she'd gone on to Dudley School and I was all alone. Well, if I thought that first year was bad, the second year made the first one look like a tea party. That was the year Mama divorced George Brezing. She started the proceedings, suing him for cruelty, drunkenness, and non-support. He immediately countersued, bringing up such unfortunate facts as that Mama had recently spent an evening in a tavern with 4 other men, during the course of which she'd gone to an upstairs room with each one of them where she remained for a considerable length of time. I've never understood why people like us were considered newsworthy, but we were. And the Lexington Press followed every charge and countercharge with an almost audible giggle. Mama finally got her divorce. Brezing left town a few weeks later, unable to stand the jibes of his fellow citizens. Didn't take Mama long to form a new alliance, this time with a carriage painter named William McMeekin. Frankly, that's all I can remember about him is his name. The next 5 years passed like a slow, dreadful sickness. McMeekin left after a year. He was followed in and out of our doors by a series of other men. The children at school continued to treat me as cruelly as only children can. In all my years at Harrison, I only made 3 friends, Sally Martin, Katie Parker, and Willie Sutphin. and I was to see him lie bleeding to death on the school grounds, the victim of a foolish gunshot accident before he was 15 years old. When I went to his house for the wake, his mother stood at the door and wouldn't let me in. And then, in 1871, Hester got married. Her husband told her she was to have no more to do with either Mama or me. Hester readily agreed. I understood. I think I even agreed with him. So there we were, Mama and me, and the occasional gentleman friend. Me, reading every book I could get my hands on, dreaming of beautiful feminine friends and handsome masculine admirers, and Mama ever and always being Mama. And then came Dionisio Mucci. I remember when the Muccis moved to Irishtown. Dionisio and his brother ran a junk business out of the yard next to our house. Dionisio drove the wagon, bringing back the old hides and furniture and dishes. He must have been about 30 years old then, married with children. Not exactly the sort of man an 11-year-old girl would pick out for her first sweetheart. But I was so lonely, and he was so kind to me. I remember he used to sit with me by the hour and listen to me talk about school. And he'd pat my hand and tell me I was better than all the rest of them, smarter and prettier, and that someday some handsome man would come along and marry me and take me away from all this. Oh, Dionisio. He illustrated the virtue of patience. For the better part of a year, we were special, secret friends, exchanging hugs and confidences, meeting in secret because nobody else would understand. For that year, I felt I had a friend as staunch as a man and as sympathetic as a girl. I was just 12 years old when he seduced me. Now, I wish I could say it was against my will, but it wasn't. I welcomed it as another step forward in a relationship too fine for anyone else to understand. Little 12-year-old girls sometimes think like that, especially when they're lonely. Over the next couple of years, my romantic horizons broadened. I began to look at boys my own age in a different light. And I wrote down my thoughts and feelings in the scrapbook that Dionisio had given me, along with pictures from Godey's Ladies book and Valentine's and other cards that my friends at school had given me. Oh, the boys, the boys, the boys. There were so many of them after Dionisio opened the gates. Boys who thought I was pretty, boys who said they liked me, boys who I hoped would be my friends when I met them in the cemetery at night. Boys who didn't speak to me at school the next day. They talked about me, they laughed at me. I knew it, and still I went with them. Nobody made me. I did what I want, I said. And then, among all those faceless boys, came one who showed me his face, and it was beautiful. His name was Johnny Cook, and I was in love. Oh, Dionisio hadn't minded any of the others, but he was furious over Johnny. I didn't care. I knew what I wanted. Of course I did. I was 14 years old. Johnny was 16, and I was pregnant. Mama handled things. Now, she'd never been very good at managing her own life, but she was certain she could run mine without a hitch. Since Johnny was obviously too young, too poor for a prospective bridegroom, Mama managed to rope in a young cigar maker named James Kinney, who had as much reason as anybody else to believe he was responsible for my condition. So James Kinney and I were married, and the Lexington Press wrote an account of the event for the amusement of their readers. A marriage in high life is reported between Miss Belle Brezing and Mr. James Kinney. The ceremony was performed at the residence of the bride's mother. It was brief, but most significant, and performed in a manner so touching that it drew tears from the eyes of those who witnessed it. La Belle Brezing is no more. She is now Mistress Kinney. I was barely 15 years old when they wrote that. 2 weeks after the wedding, I learned that Johnny planned to leave Lexington for a new job in Cincinnati. I wrote him a note and asked to see him before he left. We met in the yard, the alley behind the yard of Mucci's junkyard. Oh, Johnny was so happy and excited. I was glad for him. We said our goodbyes. I returned home. Less than an hour later, his body was found, not more than a few feet from where we exchanged our last kisses. Pistol bullet in his head, small derringer by his left hand. The coroner's jury returned a verdict of suspected suicide. Oh, I knew better. He was murdered. But by whom? Dionisio, my vengeful first lover? Mama, whose derringer Johnny had borrowed? James Kinney, out of some fatuous idea of protecting a husband's honor? Or someone else altogether? I never knew. I grieved. I sent a poem to the newspaper, which they printed with a mocking comment. And I was refused admittance to his home on the day of the funeral. James Kinney and I lived together like strangers. In a few weeks he left, leaving Mama and me as we were before. In March of 1876, my baby was born. I was just 3 months shy of my 16th birthday. I named her Daisy May. Oh, she was a pretty little thing. Sweet, quiet, easy to take care of. I was grateful for that then. A few months later, Mama died, leaving my child and me all alone in the world. I went to a neighbor, Mrs. Burnett, who'd been very kind to me at Mama's funeral, and I asked her if she would be willing to take care of Daisy May while I went out and made money to pay for her support. It all seemed to be working out very well, and yes, Emma, what is it? What? A college boy at my front door? Oh, don't tell me it's another one of those hell week things where the fraternities send their pledges around to measure the bedrooms of Belle Brezing's house. Oh, it's fatiguing being a legend. Tell him to go away. Tell him the embers in this fireplace have been cold for 20 years. No, wait a minute, Emma. Wait a minute. Since when have I turned away an admirer? Now, as if there have been so many the last few years. No, give me 5 minutes and then send him up. There's one little thing I must do first. One very small, but very necessary shot. Now, I'm sure Dr. Nevitt would understand under the circumstances, and I'll cut back next time, and we'll come out even in the end. Oh, morphine. Where is this thing? Oh, what a beautiful room. I must never take this room for granted. I remember when I got each piece in it. My beautiful walnut bed, my big mahogany chiffonier, the little cherry end table, and the Tiffany lamp. Now that lamp came from a store just off Fifth Avenue. The day we bought that lamp, Mr. Singerly took me to Sherry's for lunch. Oh, and my Persian carpets and paintings from Greenwich Village. Oh, and my beautiful full-length mirror. No bluegrass blue bloods lady ever had a finer room than this. Belle Brezing's boudoir. A man who would have killed to spend the night here. Oh, yes, young man, do come in if you can forgive the informality of the boudoir. Won't you have a seat? And you are Mr. Simpson. No, don't tell me, Mr. Simpson. You are here on special assignment from your fraternity. Oh, just a lucky guess. And what is it that your brethren at the Damatol House wish you to do for them? Measure the bedrooms of this house. I see, sort of an engineering project. Are you studying engineering, Mr. Simpson? Oh, I see. Oh, no, that's quite all right. But wait a minute. Before you get up and start crawling around on your knees with your tape measure, I have something for you. Yes. As you can see, it's a plan of the whole house, with all the specifications written in. Well, you see, Mr. Simpson, you are not the first young fraternity gentleman to come here requesting architectural specifications. A few years ago, I had 100 or so of those printed up. It saves us all a lot of trouble. Now, if that's everything, oh yes, of course. You may ask me a question. How did I get started in this business? What an unusual question. Well, Mr. Simpson, I come from poor but honest people in the backwoods of West Virginia. We were good, God-fearing folk, read the Bible every day, went to church every Sunday. I wanted nothing in this world but to grow up, be a good, God-fearing wife and mother like Mama was. But, alas, it was not to be. When I was barely in my teens, I had a toothache one day. Mama sent me to the dentist. The sign on his door said, painless dentistry. Oh, little did I know what that painless dentist had in store for me when I climbed into his big black chair. The last thing I remember is him coming toward me with that mask, and then I breathed in the gas. When I awoke, Mr. Simpson, the deed was done. That quickly, that cruelly, that monster in human form stole my virtue from me while I lay there before him, helpless, entrusted to his care. Oh, no, I never told my parents. The truth would have destroyed them. But since a life of sin had been thrust upon me, I felt I had no choice but to follow it. From there on, my life took a downward path. I soon ran off with a traveling man who brought me here to the city and abandoned me. Since then, I have, after fashion, made a life for myself. Oh, Mr. Simpson, how very dear of you. Now, if I had known many men as sweet and understanding as you are, perhaps the whole course of my life would have been different. And now you must leave me alone with my memories. Goodbye, Mr. Simpson. Goodbye. Goodbye. Oh, Lord, they still eat that up. I wish I had a dollar for every time one of my girls told that story to a client. I'd be retired of an early era. Yes, indeed. After a fashion, I did make a life for myself. Not much of one. The next few years, I bounced from man to man, struggling for money to pay Mrs. Burnett to care for Daisy May. It was 2 years of cheap rented rooms, stale crust of bread, and of saying, "Oh, thank you, sir," some drunken lout who chose not to beat me. It was called being a kept woman. And then, on Christmas Eve of 1879, the string ran out. I found myself alone on the street without $1 for room or board. The time had come. I went to a big brick house on West Main Street. Now, 40 years before, it had been the home of Robert Todd and his daughter Mary Ann. Abraham Lincoln had come courting there. Now it was the scene of a different kind of romance. It was a brothel, and Jenny Hill was the man. Miss Jenny Hill, please. Tell her it's Miss Belle Brezing. Oh, Miss Hill. My name is Belle Brezing. I've come here to work for you if you'll have me. Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's who I am. I know the papers have written a lot of things about me. I hope you won't hold that against me. Oh, yes, ma'am. I know it's a serious business. Oh, no, it hasn't been a joke for me, not for 2 years, not ever since I've had me a little girl to support. I'll work hard. I'll stay clean and sober, and I'll never, ever cause any trouble, and I'll... Oh, well, these are all my things. Oh, thank you, Miss Hill. Thank you. And Merry Christmas. I learned a lot at Belle Brezing's, at Jenny Hill's the next year and a half. Prostitution may be called a profession, but those who practice it are not always very professional, I found. I began by analyzing my customers in terms of their stated needs, and then in terms of their unstated ones. Well, before long, I discovered I was taking regular clients away from other girls. I had to work very hard to keep chummy relations with my fellow employees. For instance, I discovered that many of the gentlemen were ashamed to come to the front door of that house on West Main where anybody could see them. So I arranged to have them met at the side entrance by the maid, and she would bring them directly up to my room. I paid her $1 for each one she brought up, paid off 100 times over. I could never figure out why nobody thought of that before I came. What I had told Jenny Hill was the simple truth. I paid attention, learned the ropes, worked hard, never ever caused any trouble. I was able to make enough money not only to pay Mrs. Burnett, but also to put some away for future plans. I hadn't been there very long before I decided that if I am to spend my life in the marketplace, I intend to function as management, not labor. That was just about the time we discovered that Daisy May was retarded. Mrs. Burnett took her to a doctor who said that Daisy May's brain would never develop beyond the stage where it was now. That meant a home. And a home meant a lot more money. I went to Jenny Hill with my problem. I told her I wanted to open a house of my own. Well, at first she could hardly believe me. I was barely 20 years old, had only worked professionally for a few months, but once I convinced her, she offered me her help and advice. I have found in this business, if you're honest with people, they tend to be honest with you. It's more than can be said for a lot of so-called respectable businesses. In my year and a half at Jenny Hill's, I managed to save enough money for a down payment on a house. And I picked out a small house on North Upper, took out a mortgage and another small loan to furnish it modestly but pleasantly, and on July 1st, 1881, we moved in. My 4 girls, my maid, and I. Oh, it was share and share alike in those days. I functioned as labor as well as management. We all pulled together. It was not entirely without problems to begin with. When I had chosen that house on North Upper, I hadn't realized it was barely a stone's throw away from Transylvania's College of the Bible. We hadn't been there very long when I was emphatically informed that my establishment was, I believe the expression was, inappropriately located. That began a legal struggle that lasted as long as we were on North Upper. I've often wondered what these very moral gentlemen would have considered an appropriate location. Anywhere outside of their eyesight, I should imagine. But we did prosper. And within 2 years, I was able to take myself out of competition with my employees. Believe me, that represented no hardship on my part. By that time, I'd met the 2 most important men in my life, Billy Mabry and William Singerly. Billy Mabry was connected to the famous Hunt Morgan family. His sister was married to John Hunt Morgan's brother. All his life, Billy worked as cashier of the Lexington Water Company. Day after day, he went down to that responsible job, but he never let it take over his life. No, indeed. Billy liked the sporting life too much for that. He first came to the house on North Upper in 1883. He soon became a regular client. I don't remember when our casual relationship ripened into something deeper, but by 1888, neither of us had eyes for anyone else. Well, except for Mr. Singerly, of course. Now, Mr. Singerly was a rich and powerful gentleman from Philadelphia, where he owned the Philadelphia Record and the City Street Railway system. He also was a lover of the sport of kings, and he spent 2 weeks every year in the Bluegrass for the racing season. Oh, Mr. Singerly was a big man with big ideas, the kind that had the power to move men's minds. He and Billy hated each other, of course, but that was only a problem during the racing season. Billy dear, oh Billy, thank you for the lovely book. I love the inscription. From Will to Kitten. Nobody else has ever called me Kitten. Billy, I have to talk to you, dear. A dozen roses just arrived. Now you know what that means? Yes, about 9 o'clock. I'm afraid you'll have to make other arrangements temporarily. Oh, Billy, I know how you feel, but it's strictly business. You know that. And look, if the man wants to spend 2 weeks a year living in a parlor house, what's it to us? After all, he did loan me the money to open this establishment. Well, I don't really know why he doesn't want you around. I think maybe you make him nervous. Oh, Billy, it's sweet of you to be jealous, but it's so silly, too. As if I had room in my heart for any other man but you. And now, dear, now you really must go. Au revoir. Au revoir, my handsome Billy. Pearl, I want you to check Mr. Billy's room. Make sure he doesn't leave anything. I don't want Mr. Singerly reminded of any previous occupant. And, oh, Pearl, when they arrive, have Mr. Singerly shown directly up here. He and I will eat in my room tonight. The rest of his party can eat downstairs. After the ball is over, after the break of day, many a heart is aching. Oh no. No more Billy. No more Mr. Singerly. No more Pearl. It's all gone. Gone with the wind. Huh. Like that book by that Georgia woman who married John Munch of the Lexington Herald. What was her name? Mitchell. Margaret Mitchell. Yes. She called me by a different name in that book. She called me Belle Watling. Never fooled anybody in Lexington for a minute. It was Mr. Singerly who advanced me the money to open the house on McGowan Street. $50,000 to furnish, equip, and staff, which was later referred to as the most orderly of disorderly houses. During the months before we opened, I worked harder than I ever have in my life. The workmen installed the hardwood paneling, the floors, the beautiful stairway, the stained glass windows. I chose the wallpaper, helped hang a great deal of it. I picked out every stick of furniture, every foot of carpet, every picture, every mirror. I decided what food would come from the kitchen, what liquor would be served over the bar, and most important of all, I selected the staff. Now, when some of the girls heard my rules, they could hardly believe them, but they abided by them or they didn't work. Come in, my dear. I believe we should have an understanding. To begin with, every girl who works here will be a lady in manner, in appearance, in speech, and deportment. Well, yes, of course, I think you are, or at least you have the right instincts. You wouldn't be here if I didn't. Now, no girl shall appear on the first floor unless she is completely groomed and gowned. Yes, of course, I realize that means you will lose considerable time between each engagement, but you must be aware of the fact that gentlemen will all be wearing evening clothes. They will expect their companions of choice to be similarly attired. Now, no girl will smoke or swear or drink to excess in the presence of clients. Oh yes, she will drink with them, of course, but only champagne or other imported wine, and only one glass from the bottle. Now listen, my dear, I only want to say this once. I intend to create here an atmosphere of genteel refinement. If you can abide by these rules, fine. If you can't, there are plenty of cribs and deadfalls within a few blocks of here where you might be happier. The choice is yours. Yes, I'm sure we can work something out. Oh, and I don't want you to worry 1 minute about the clientele. I just hired a bouncer who is a former sparring partner for 2 world champion boxers. If he can't keep things refined, I don't know who can. Opening night was by invitation only. I had contacted the madams of the better houses in Louisville, Nashville, and Memphis, asked them to send their most beautiful girls to join my young ladies for the inaugural festivities. The gentlemen represented the most influential financial and political leaders in the Blue Pass. Champagne, brandy flowed like water. 2 orchestras played for dancing. No one who was here that night will ever forget it. Welcome to Belle Brezing. You honor us with your presence. May you come often, stay long, and may each moment's joy seem to last a lifetime. Billy Neighbor made up that toast for me. By that time, he had agreed to be my outside representative, handling such aspects of the business that I, as a woman, could not manage. I gave him a room on the 3rd floor where he lived, except for the 2 weeks of the racing season. We generally had between 12 and 15 girls. And a happy and contented lot they were, too. Due mainly to my liberal financial policy, as well as our genteel atmosphere. Unlike most madams, I never required the girls to pay me a percentage of what they took in. Instead, each girl collected $5 from every client, which she kept, plus tips. Then at the end of the week, she would pay me $24 to cover her room, board, laundry, plus a small down payment on whatever money she might owe for lingerie or evening clothes. Most of the girls cleared between $10 and $50 a week. Frankly, I never made as much from them as I did from the food and liquor, with nickel beer going for $1 a bottle and my imported champagne at $5 a bottle. And oh, how the money poured in. Every Monday, I would ride downtown in my phaeton carriage behind two matched gray mares driven by a handsome black coachman. We'd drive right through the center of Lexington up to the Lexington National Bank. I would sweep through the lobby, past dozens of my clients whom I never recognized outside my own parlor. Mr. McFarland, the cashier, would greet me effusively. "Miss Brezing, how delightful to see you." Take my black bag, pour all the money out on his big desk, count it, write me out a receipt, and bow me out the door like royalty. Never, ever underestimate the power of money in any business. I arranged for my girls to buy their lingerie and their evening clothes at Lexington's finest stores, Embry's, Myers, Strauss's. We would go down right at the dinner hour when no one else was around, and in 1 hour, we'd spend $5,000. Other afternoons, we'd attend a matinee at the Opera House or one of the vaudeville houses. I'd take a box, sometimes two, right over the stage. The girls would be beautifully gowned and groomed, resembled nothing so much as a bevy of debutantes on their way to a coming-out party. We always got more attention than the actors. I always felt it was the best advertising money could buy. Oh, it was such a good time all those years. We never had any trouble. Occasionally, morality would sweep the bluegrass and I would be taken downtown, but I never spent so much as an hour behind bars, and when the newspapers mentioned me, it was with an increasingly respectful tone. The only dark shadow that fell over us during that time was the fate of Mr. Singerly. In 1898, he began to suffer business losses. First, he lost the Philadelphia Record, then the City Street Railway System, finally his farm. At the same time, word came that his health was failing, and a few months later, that he had died. Oh, Mr. Singerly was a powerful man. He knew what he wanted and he took it, regardless of the price or the ultimate cost. Toward me, he was unfailingly kind, unfailingly generous. I had more reason to love that man than any other I have ever known, and yet somehow, for all those years, I never thought of him as any way except Mr. Singerly. Yes, Emma, what is it? The book, gentlemen? Very well, I guess I'm as ready as I'll ever be. You must show them up. Come in, gentlemen, please, if you can forgive the informality. Mr. Townsend. Oh, I have followed many of your celebrated cases in the newspaper. Oh, yes, I am quite an enthusiastic legal observer, didn't you know? And Mr. Dangerfield, of course. Now, I have seen your name many times on the society pages. And Mr. Coleman, I must tell you how very much I have enjoyed your books on Lexington history. Well, gentlemen, may I offer you some refreshment? I'm sure if we give Emma a few moments, she could bring us up some tea. Nothing? You're sure? Very well. Emma, you may go. Well, gentlemen, here are the books that I promised President McVeigh for the University of Kentucky Library. I think you'll find some interesting volumes here. I know there are some first editions by Kentucky authors. Let's see. There's Acquire Invisible by James Lane Allen. and Trail of the Lonesome Pine by John Fox Jr. Now, as I told Mr. McVeigh, you are welcome to as many or as few as you wish. Please, do come and look them over. Well, Mr. Townsend, I imagine we have some mutual acquaintances in the Lexington Bar Association. Oh, yes, yes, that name's familiar. Yes, I know that name, too. Oh, you must certainly have known the late Judge John J. Riley. Oh, yes, a dear friend, not only of mine, but of all the ladies in the profession. You know, he married a girl from this house after his first wife died. Yes, a man of great tolerance. Once, during a sweep of the area, some of my young ladies were picked up and taken downtown. They appeared in front of him in his court. Well, he asked each one of them her name and her profession, and each one replied, "Dressmaker, Judge." He came to the last girl, and it was one he knew very well. And she looked up at him and she said, "Oh, Judge, you know what I am." Well, he laughed, leaned over his big desk and said, "Well, how's business?" And she said, "Lousy, Judge, with all these damn dressmakers." Oh, yes, there was a refreshing amount of honesty around in those days. Oh, yes, Mr. Coleman, that book. Oh, that's Owen Meredith's Lucinda. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'm not quite ready to part with that. You see, it's inscribed. Well, I'll tell you, your librarian will have it soon enough. Oh, Mr. Coleman, didn't I read where you recently attended a dinner in honor of John Jacob Niles? Oh, yes. Beautiful voice, the way he sings those simple mountain songs. You know, he sang here in this house once. Well, of course I'll tell you about it. It was years ago. He was barely out of his teens, right at Christmas time, 1912, I think. I read an account, a glowing account, of a concert he'd given at Christ Church, and I called him up, asked if he would stop by to discuss a business proposition. Well, the next day he came, very young, very nervous, and trying so hard to be worldly. I invited him into the parlor, and I asked if he could get 3 other singers and come Christmas morning to serenade my girls with carols. I told him I'd pay $5 each. Well, he readily accepted. I think he needed the money. So, there he was on Christmas morning, 7 o'clock, on my doorstep. But all alone. Seems he couldn't find 3 other people who were willing to crawl out of their warm beds at dawn on Christmas Day to sing in a brothel. He offered to do it himself, so that's what we did. John Jacob Niles and I paraded up and down the halls of this house while he sang all the beautiful old carols in that gorgeous, high tenor voice of his. The girls poking their heads out, their nightcaps and their braids, their jaws dropping open. When he finished, we all went downstairs and had breakfast at this long table. John Jacob Niles and Miss Belle Brezing's corps de ballet, and I think every girl at that table fell in love with him. Oh, certainly, Mr. Townsend. Wait a minute, let me get the companion phone. Did you get everything you want, Mr. Dangerfield? Good. Here, Mr. Coleman, let me help you. Oh, gentlemen, you are most welcome. I'm just so delighted that my books are finding a good home. Please, give my warmest regards to President McVeigh. Tell him I'm sorry we never met personally. Good day. Goodbye. Oh, books are good friends, but there comes a time when even the best of friends must part. Oh, time went so fast toward the end. February 1917, Billy died. Oh, Billy, how I missed you. How I miss you still. Your sister let me sit with you as long as I didn't embarrass anyone by coming to the funeral. That was the year we entered the Great War, and Lexington was soon thronged with all the young men from the surrounding army camps. Morality swept the bluegrass like a plague, and the churches and newspapers decided that all these young men had to be protected against the vices of the city, so the authorities began closing down the houses. Oh, some of the madams tried to reopen again, playing sort of a cat and mouse game with the police. That was never my style. I called the girls together, explained that we were going out of business, gave each one of them as much of an advance as I could afford, and Pearl and I settled down to play out the spring. Oh, the months and years passed, dull, dull, dull. Weeks would go by and no one would come to this house at all. Pearl drank more and more heavily, and I increased my indulgence in my habit. And then in 1929, Pearl died, the last of my 3 dear friends. Since then, I have known what it is to be all alone in this world. Oh, I need a shot. I'm sure Dr. Nevitt would understand. It's been such a long morning, and it's such a long time till evening. Oh. Billy, Billy, come be kitten. Thank you.